Hello everyone, I am WinterStarcraft and welcome to episode 4 of my episode 3 actually. Good start. Of my Bronze to Master series. Today we're going to be talking about how to learn. This is kind of a very general concept. By how to learn I mean how to put yourself in the right mindset to efficiently improve. But that doesn't sound nearly as catchy in a title. But that's really what we're working on here. We can see right over here, this is what I'm going to be talking about throughout this. This is a little bit of a quicker episode. I'm just going to be going through nothing in-game. I'm just going to be talking to you, looking at you, telling you what to do. Okay, that's not a good start. But how to learn. First off, my qualifications. I've played over 20,000 games of StarCraft now. I think it's about 21 or 22,000 by this point. Over 5,000 is every race. Being a Masters random player, a top 8, top 15 Masters random player pretty regularly. I played a lot of games of StarCraft in my day. To put it that way, over the last 3 years, I have maintained an interest in the game, which I found many of my friends and many people that I knew at the beginning of StarCraft, or many people that even over the last couple years have decided, like, this is not the game for me. Like, I can't keep this up. I'm not improving quickly enough. I get frustrated. I don't know how to deal with these things. And this, right here, I'm going to outline how I'm able to keep that interest, how I'm able to keep improving, or at least maintaining a very relatively high level of play in the top 1% of players. And we're going to go right through it. Alright, so, the first, learning how to play. Learning how to learn, rather, not to play. This is very important. You're not learning how to play StarCraft, because that's inefficient. If all you do is learn how to play StarCraft, you can't take anything away from this. And in learning how to play StarCraft, it's more important to learn how you yourself improve. Now, I'm going to be going from my personal experience as someone who can grind out 15, 30 games if they need to. They can do the same build every single game to find out what are its weaknesses, what are its strengths. And this is a mindset I found to be very helpful when it comes to maintaining a positive attitude. And also as a random player, I have a kind of an objective perspective on a lot of things. I find a lot of players, they'll never go outside their race. They'll never off-race as their worst matchup. Say you're a Terran player and your TVZ is really lacking. A lot of Terran players will just say, Zerg, oh, there's just no way to beat it. I'm just trying all these strategies and they're not working. But at no point will they try playing Zerg against Terran to see what vulnerabilities they have. And I think that's a very important point. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But it's more important that you kind of realize how you need to learn, whether it's watching builds a lot of the time and really thinking about your build, or just grinding out games. Some people can actually benefit from grinding out games for 8, 12 hours a day. Some people, maybe only 2 or 3 hours of games and maybe a couple other hours of just checking some pro replays or practicing builds against the AI. There's always different types of learning. It's very important you realize what you're most likely to improve with. For me, it's probably 15 to 30 games a day, along with watching maybe a couple hours of games to kind of confirm my builds and maybe going over replays a little bit. But mostly just applying things and thinking about, while I'm applying them, what is going on right now, what am I really looking to take away from this, and how can I execute my game plan that I'm working on right now. Say my game plan is to get 3 to 4 bases of Zerg, and then execute an attack with 200 supply before they max out. Well, what mistakes did I make in that in the process of that, in say ZVP or something like that? And then I kind of think about that and apply that to the next game I play. But I find playing more than 15 to 20 games at a time usually is a little bit counterproductive. 15 to 20 is about 3 to 4 hours. I average 4 to 5 games an hour, 15 minutes or so in real time for a regular game. And then I kind of think about, well, after that point, you start to get a little bit burnt out, I guess you could say. You gotta take a break for a couple hours. That's usually when I go get something to eat, maybe sit back, watch a stream or something like that. And that's my personal style of improving. That might not work for you. Maybe you're someone who can go 30 games, maybe you're someone who can only go 5. But what's important is you take as much away from those games and you use the rest of your time as efficiently as possible to improve, to reduce frustration, and to kind of keep yourself from getting in that negative mindset that's so detracting from improvement. Alright, what's next? There's always a bigger fish. What do I mean by this? There's always going to be a better player than you. I don't care if you're Flash. There's someone who's better in a certain matchup with a certain build that's going to be better than you. It's not because the game is imbalanced. I'll move on to that in just a second. It's because they executed their build better than you did. Sure, their build might have been a build order win, for example. Maybe you have to think about what could I prevent this from being a build order win or something like that. But there will always be better players than you. And you have to realize that maybe even though that person just did a proxy Rax against you, well, obviously you can't defend proxy Raxes well enough, and that's why you didn't win the game. StarCraft is not a very forgiving game. You can't just be like, oh, my teammate fucked up, I'm screwed, unless you're playing 2v2 for some reason. You have to say, I made mistakes in this game. I'll be moving on to my next point in a second, but there's always someone better than you. Every person who beats you, and every person you beat even, probably has at least one thing that you could learn from, even if they're playing a different race, or a different strategy, or a different style than you're used to. And you have to realize that every time you lose. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck saying, well, the game is imbalanced, or I just can't play this game, or something like that. And that's not true! Everyone can play StarCraft, and you can always improve. But you have to have the right mindset for it. Alright. It's really not imba. What does this mean? Are you top 16 Korean GM? Do you have thousands of WCS points and will be going to the WCS Season 3 Finals? No? No, really. I find that surprising considering that's like 0.02% of players who will actually be pulling that off. While you, on the ladder right now, or me on the ladder right now, facing like 1 GM every 10 games, like, because it doesn't actually matter, there's no imba. Right, in the last 2 tournaments, there's been a 5-5-6 race distribution. It doesn't even matter what's the 6 because it's statistically insignificant. StarCraft has, throughout its history, been a game that has been ridiculously balanced compared to any other RTS game. Any other game, really, even MOBA games, are really difficult to balance compared to StarCraft. The 3 races have such... The metagame shifts so often. The game hasn't been figured out yet. StarCraft 2's been out for, what, a little over 3 years now. Brood War was out for 12 and people were still coming up with new strategies. It's not just because that Protoss Deathball rolled you over right now, Mr. Zerg player, because you decided Roach Hydra would be your strategy for the entirety of the game. Doesn't mean Protoss is imba. What it means is you couldn't either transition or you didn't come up with a build that could prevent a Protoss player from getting there. Sure, at the lower levels there might be less or more APM intensive, multitasking intensive builds, but at the highest level, the game is not imbalanced. And until you're at the highest level, I honestly, even myself, as a random player, I tell my race at the beginning of the game as well. I really don't feel that there's any significant differences between the races that would cause any matchups to be really imbalanced to the point where you can complain that a certain race is broken or a certain build is overpowered. Because honestly, until you have 90% injects, 350 APM, you hit every creep tumor, and you make sure every larva is being used very efficiently, you have no room to complain. I don't have any room to complain. I feel like I'm at the point where I can realize how ridiculously balanced and how high level the top players are playing, and below my level, or even above my level, really, there aren't any significant differences between the races that would cause one to be more advantageous than the other. So if you can get that out of your head, if you can stop saying, those 2 gates, they're just too fucking good, or 2-base Protoss, or 2-base, or just making Marines, it's just too good. No! No, Mr. Platinum player. I'm not looking to call anyone out. But in my Bronze to Masters endeavors on stream, I found a lot of Platinum players very commonly, I'm not looking to single Platinum players out here, but they're very commonly inclined to... Mr. Kim is someone they'd want to talk to about their concerns. So, if you can get over the, oh, this is imba, or, oh, I lost this strategy, I don't need to figure out how to beat that because it'll be patched soon. No! Figure it out! Go play Protoss! Go do that annoying strategy that you think is so ridiculously amazing, and then die to certain things from your race, and then learn how to beat it. And that's how I like to do it as random. I can see both sides of every single build. I recommend that everyone play random for at least a little while, or maybe off race 1 day a week, in order to kind of learn the other races and learn the other side of the matchup in order to exploit the weaknesses of your opponents even more. Alright. Now moving on to the next point. There is no cheese. Sure, Of course, there actually is cheese. That was kind of a metaphor. But if you're looking to move up, if you're looking to improve, you can't say, oh, he two-gated. He's just bad and terrible, and I guess, like, I had no chance in that game. Maybe if you're getting two-gated, you should take note of that two-gate spot, scout quicker, make sure you cover that spot, and never die to that two-gate again. Stuff like that. That's just an example. Maybe a proxy Rax, maybe a 6-pool. You have to figure out how to beat it. And if you're putting yourself in a position where you can die to build order losses, you have to accept the race is not in balance, but you left yourself open to those losses. And you have to realize yourself, maybe you should try cheesing. If you're a player who absolutely despises cheese, like, if he's cannon rushing me, he's just a bad person and deserves to die in a hole after suffering from cancer for 15 years straight, as well as gout or something. I don't know. If I hear that again, I don't know. But there is no cheese. You have to accept that there are so many options. That's why StarCraft is so goddamn amazing and diverse. Is that from the 2 to the 200-minute mark, even though most games don't get far. Okay, we'll say 50-minute mark. There's such a huge diversity of strategies, including very early attacks that could be considered all-in, or cheese or anything like that. And you are susceptible to all of them, but also at the same time, you can do all of those. So there is no cheese. You have to accept it. And then once you start beating that cheese, you start beating those players who only have 1 or 2 builds in their arsenal, and those builds really rely on catching your opponent off guard. If you can defend yourself against every attack, then finally you'll be able to move up with all those free wins, because there are so many wins that, as long as you know what to scout for, and I'll go over this in later episodes or replay analysis or whatever, you can just make the correct unit, you can make the correct defenses, you can be prepared, and then pick up some easy ladder points right there. Instead of saying, oh, you're a cheeser, okay, I just died to this because I was trying to do a macro build because I'm a macro player, because I have a soul, or anything like that. Because that's just not how StarCraft works, guys. Alright, next. The Alomar System. In my experiences, I've gone from the Bronze League to the Masters League, or some league to the Masters League, probably 2-3 dozen times over the past several years, based on various accounts or Bronze to Master Series or whatever. The MMR system I find is very consistent. If you're consistently beating, over the course of enough games, players of a higher league or 2 higher leagues, you will get promoted. It's a matter of time. If you don't feel like, maybe you go on like a 12-win streak at rank 7 gold or something like that, and you get to rank 3, and you feel like you should be promoted to platinum by now. Well, that's not necessarily true. Just some notes I want to make. Since gold is the largest league, there are a lot of players who think they should be platinum, but since gold is a much larger league, ever since they took out the demotions, it's much harder to get promoted into the smaller leagues, such as platinum or masters. I find gold and diamond are especially the places where, while you might be playing players of the higher league, you are not very likely to get promoted until you play a very solid amount of games. So I just want to point that out. But do not blame the ladder system. Just keep playing. If you keep winning, you'll get promoted. You'll get there. Don't get discouraged. Just kind of try to ignore your rank and work on improving your play. And now, I kind of went over this a little bit before, but a very important point. Everyone knows something that you don't. If there's a player who cannon rushes every game, you know what he's better at? He's better at cannon rushing. There's something to learn from that. You kind of take down notes. How did he cannon rush? Every time you need to cannon rush, maybe you're in a best of 3 in a tournament or something, and he's going hatch first every game blindly. Well, then you can cannon rush that, because now you know, despite the fact that, oh, maybe he's just a big cheeser, and he just cheeses every game, and he doesn't have any macro strategies. Well, if you need to cheese, then who are you going to take tips from? The cheeser, or yourself, who's just calling him out for cheese every game instead of trying it himself? So whenever you lose a game, there's always something to take away from that, even if it's, when I leave my supply depot down, he can run in with Zerglings. You have to realize that, and he knows that. Maybe he did something to distract you at the same time. Like, something I like to do is maybe send an Overlord in, or maybe send a few Lings into his third base, so that way he won't be paying attention to the 40 Lings that are about to run in his natural, where he has his depots down because he was rallying out his Marines. Just a very specific example. But everyone, if you lose to a player, even if you win against a player, they probably did something that you didn't realize, or something they did better than you. So you have to think about that, and just realize that despite the fact you may have lost the game in the horrible fashion, you made huge amounts of mistakes, and you did terribly, he did something that exploited those mistakes, and you have to take that into account. So never disregard a game that you lose, but instead try to take something away from it. It's even games that you win as well. Confidence. You have to have confidence. I find the times I win the most are when I actually don't care about winning. I don't want to win this game. I just want to play my best. I just know that I can do a strategy that is successful. I don't care if I'm winning. I don't need these ladder points. I don't need to get top 8 real quick so that way my teammates think I'm really good or something like that. I'm just thinking I can win this game. Like, I can beat this guy. Obviously, I'm better. I'm moving my overlords in the right place. I'm counterattacking with links. I'm getting some good stuff going on. I find the times that I'm just laid back, relaxed, and just playing games, I have a much higher success rate. I feel a lot more comfortable. I feel a lot more successful and a lot less stressed than when I'm saying, okay, oh, season ends tomorrow. I got to get 2, 3, 8 more games in to get rid of my bonus pool. I got to win them all. Otherwise, I won't get top 8. I might not get promoted next season. No, you can't do that. You're going to lose like 7 out of those games because you'll be so stressed out. You'll be freaking out over every mistake you make. You'll miss things on the map because you'll be trying so hard to catch everything. You'll miss things because that's just how the human brain works. And also, you just have to trust in yourself. You played 10 games every day this week. You know what you're looking at. If you just kind of let yourself go a little bit, you got to get in the zone, if you will. There are lots of videos on that, like in real sports. StarCraft is definitely a real sport, but I'll get into that in a second. You just have to let yourself kind of go with it, alright? You'll make mistakes. You'll get caught off guard. But the more relaxed you are, the more willing to take in certain things that you are, the more you'll catch that drop on the minimap. The more you'll have your units in position in time. The more you'll have the watchtowers and have scouting and have your ling in the front. And I find the best way to do that is just kind of, I don't know, get in the mindset. Sometimes I like to watch like videos of epic plays on YouTube or something like that. I might link some in the description. Sometimes I watch streams for a little bit. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. But you got to be in the mindset. It can't be when you're stressed out. It can't be when you're really pressed for time or something like that. It's just when you're sitting back, relaxing, and you can just play. That I find I do the most successful, and most people do the most successful. Because at that point, you have the most positive mindset. Even if you lose, you'll kind of be thinking, okay, I made these mistakes, I can do better next time, instead of, oh god, I lost, now I have to win 2 games in a row, otherwise I'll never get top 8, or something like that. And that's just not the mindset you want to be in ever, so. Alright. Bad habits. What are bad habits in StarCraft? Bad habits are continually doing things that you know will fail. Like saying you scout that he's going to have 3-4 bunkers, or he scouted you're all in, and you still go for it anyway. Because you're like, okay, this is just the build I'm doing in this matchup. Not willing to adapt. Not willing to tech switch. There was a time when I refused to use Banelings in ZVZ. And then I just switched to Ling Baneling. I got good, well, decent at Ling Baneling micro, and suddenly my win rate went up like 15%. I didn't keep myself away from using builds that were in the current metagame or very successful just because I didn't like a certain strategy. I thought it was cheesy or something like that. If you think you got cheesed or something like that, not watching the replay, not realizing exactly what went into that cheese or what you could have scouted, or maybe you saw something on the map you didn't realize during the game. Not watching those replays just because you're so angry about, oh, fucker cannon rushed me, or I got 2-gated or something like that. That's the best way to just lose to that over and over, is just ignoring those losses. I'd say losses where if you had scouted something you would have won the game are the most important, because that way you'll get much better, I was about to say much better at scouting exactly what you need to in order to defend yourself against those strategies. And that's very important. Now, good habits, what I've really done that's actually really helped me out, I GG every game. Every single game. I don't care who I'm playing against. I don't care what strategy they used. I don't care whether it was my mistakes or him outplaying the shit out of me that I actually won the game. I GG every game, no matter what. GG F10N, right there. I don't know why, but it gives you that feeling of, alright, I lost, but it's not the end of the world type of thing. I don't care what it's not a matter of, there's nothing that can change that. No matter how I lose, no matter if he offensive GG'd and BN'd me the entire game, no matter if he was cursing my family the entire time, and then he came in with a DT drop after going like 1-base Oracle or something, I don't even know. I GG. That's just personal for me, but I find it really helps out my mindset when going to, I'll be able to press that play again button right afterwards if I GG, because I'm thinking it's not the end of the world. I can play more games. That's one game of thousands. We'll just move on. And I think that's a really good habit to get into. Alright, and now another thing I like to do, and I recommend all my students when I'm coaching, you can also check out several, I think there's 5 or 6 hours at least of coaching up on my channel right now. If you subscribe, you can see them. But I like to say, after every single game, if possible, you write down 3 things you did right and 3 things you did wrong. Because you will do 3 things right, even if you had the worst game ever. Whether it's like consistently making workers or hitting your first pylon, even if you're at that level. But even if you played what you think is a perfect game, I guarantee you, there are at least 3 things you did wrong. Very seriously, very regularly, many more. We're talking major mistakes that even though you won, you could have won a lot easier, or a lot more effectively or quicker. And I would be hard-pressed to find a single player, even at the top pro level, who doesn't make 3 mistakes in a game. Whether it be misclicks, moving your units in the wrong spot, not scouting something like that. But try to write down 3 things you did right, 3 things you did wrong. Pretty major every game. If you can't do that, go into the replay and find them. And I guarantee you, even better if you want to get more in-depth, I don't do this as often, but if you can do that for your opponent as well, that way you can really get into the mind of your opponent, and you can understand what the mistakes they're making and why they're making certain actions during the game. Alright, replay analysis. I'm just going to say right now, just go over the replay and don't think about the last engagement. It's not about how you controlled the last engagement. It's about everything leading up to that point. That's most important. I'm going to have another episode completely devoted to replay analysis, so I'm just going to glaze over it now. But just think about, it's a tool. It's not used to like point out imbalance or kind of claim he's map hacking. It's a tool to be used in order to, like, sometimes what I like to do in replays, if you're like, well, I just lost the last engagement, you go 5 minutes back, you take command, and you see if you could have maxed out like 2 or 3 minutes quicker if you weren't focusing on microing that one drop that's doing no damage or something like that. And I find a lot of players get caught up in saying, well, if I just had like a couple more corruptors, I targeted down his Colossi in the last engage, then would have had it. Well, you know what would have been even better? Not letting him get a third base so he could have less Colossi, so it wouldn't even matter what you were doing, for example. Or maybe you tech switch into mutas or something like that, and you see how that goes. But I think the take command tool is really underused nowadays. So, all right. Now, as for practice regimen, I'm gonna have another episode as well on how to practice. But all I want to say right now, you have to figure out for yourself what's best. I'm telling you how I learn and how I found what is really effective to coach people with, but everyone's different. I find myself, I can play 15 to 20 games, then I have to take a break, and then maybe another 10 to 20 games after that on a good day. But usually 15 to 20 might just be a day for me. With replay analysis after every game I didn't really understand, and also thinking about every game in between. You might be able to play more, most will be able to play less before they get kind of burnt out. But it's really important that you kind of recognize whether you lost a game or you weren't feeling good about a game because you haven't warmed up yet, because you just weren't, everything was not on point, or because you lost like a build order win or something that was easily scoutable. And I find a lot of the time when I think about it, it's like, well, I could have done these 2 or 3 things very easily and just been in a much better position in the game. There are days, of course, some days I won't play because I'm just like, you're not feeling it some days. Everybody has those days, even the pro players. So some days you're just not feeling it. On those days, maybe it's better to just watch a stream, not play, not kind of dig yourself into a deeper hole. But you have to kind of recognize whether you're losing because of your mindset, or whether you're losing because you're not scouting really basic things, or you're making simple mistakes that are easily fixed if you just think about them. And that kind of determines whether I go on during the day, stuff like that. So, competition. Now, you're competing against everyone else on the ladder. Everyone else in StarCraft is playing on the ladder. Anyone competitive. It's not just because you're winning more than you did 2 months ago, or you're doing better in a certain matchup than you did 2 months ago, does not mean you're going to move up in rank. Why? It's not static. It's not like I have 10 points and then I have 20 points, so I'm going to move up twice as much. No. You're competing against everyone else. What you have to do is improve faster than them. You're running a race right now. You're not just getting through it. You have to run and compete against everyone else on the ladder, and you have to improve faster than them in order to move up in ranks. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I've improved, I should do better now. which isn't necessarily the truth if they're not improving quicker than their peers or even people better than them, because at that point you'll never catch up. So of course the point of this is to give you an efficient tool in order to improve, but it really takes that mindset, that focus training, that realization that nothing is imba and that you're competing against everyone else and everyone can make mistakes that you can exploit in order to move up quicker. Even if you're only playing a few games a day or maybe a few games every few days, you can move up quicker than your peers, than your colleagues, and move up into a new league where you can move up quicker than them, and so on and so forth, and then find yourself where you want to be. Alright, what else do we have here? Time put in. Now, you may be thinking like, well, Stefano only practiced 2-3 hours a day and he was still good. Okay, let's be honest. Stefano practiced much more than 2 or 3 hours a day. And there's natural talent. It does factor in. It's not the deciding factor, but natural talent can really affect how you practice. What does that mean? A player like Stefano might be able to get by on like 10 to 15 games a day and just thinking about the games. Maybe he's really good mentally and coming up with scenarios in his head. I know Stefano's not playing still, guys, but I'm using him as an example as the most successful foreigner. But really good at thinking in his head, oh, maybe if I see this, I'll do this. If you're good at thinking hypothetically in your head, maybe you're during class or you're driving or something, you're saying, next time I get DT rushed off of 2 bases at the 8-minute mark, maybe I should just go mutas before we can have Storm, as opposed to trying to make roaches and just defend. Or something like that. Maybe you're thinking about that. But if you're someone who learns from experience, I know I'm mostly someone who learns from experience more than anything else. That's why I play so many games a day. You're going to actually have to be in that situation before it really gets ingrained, where you can use it in games past that point. So kind of realize, try to think about right now, whether you're someone who learns from example, from example, whether you're someone who learns from lecturing, from learning, from watching and just listening, or someone who's really hands-on and who has to feel it in their hands, has to know exactly what it is like to be firsthand in that situation in order to take away improvement from that. So you're going to have to figure that out for yourself because I can't do it for you. But right now I just want you to think about whether you're one of those two kinds of people. I mean, there's more. There's a big middle ground. There's a gray area here. But that's the example I want to use. Alright. Now, stealing builds. This is something you usually want to do at the higher level, say gold and above. But stealing builds is pretty important. If you have a template to work off of, what you really need to understand, when you're stealing a build, when you're saying, I'm going to go one-gated span, just like Rain, you have to determine why Rain is doing what he does. As opposed to, oh, this is the build, and just blindly following it and finding yourself losing to a bunch of random things along the way because you didn't make those little scouting decisions, or you didn't understand exactly why certain buildings were going down at certain times and you weren't able to maximize the build. Ideally, if you can get a replay or watch a first-person VOD of a player whose build you're stealing, you want to kind of get inside their head and think, why are you making these decisions? What did you see to prompt them? And what advantage are you gaining from making them at this time as opposed to maybe earlier or later? And that's what you're really looking for when you're stealing a build. You're not looking for the build so much as you're looking for why you're doing the build. And I find that's a common misconception. Like, people are like, well, I do the Rain one-gated span build and I just die to drops every game. Well, did you make your observers and put them in the right position and then decide to research Blink when you saw he was going for quick medevacs? Or did you just blindly follow the build and just go for like 2 Colossi with no units and die to a full frontal attack without any observers? And that's important to note. There's a lot of differences in between there. Despite the fact you're following a pro build, doesn't mean you're going to have pro decision making. Which moves me on to one of my last points here, decision making. This is very important to learn. It's a long process. It comes a lot from experience, and it comes a lot from intelligent analysis. Decision making is something that doesn't always happen in the game. Positive decision making, good decision making is what I should say. A lot of players will, the first time they encounter a situation, like the first time they encounter charge lots or something like that, they'll be like, well, I didn't have enough roaches, I need to make more roaches, or something like that, instead of thinking, or going back in the replay, or thinking, okay, maybe there's another strategy here, like, oh, swarm hosts are pretty good against that, or something. You find players making the same mistake again and again and again. While getting closer, I mean, sometimes you can force a certain strategy to work, but they get so pigeonholed in a certain mindset that they don't think there are any other strategies that can work because they've had mild success with a certain one that they forced themselves into over the last however many dozens or hundreds of games. So it's really important with decision making to be flexible. StarCraft is a game of hundreds of thousands of decisions per game. It may not seem like it, but you decided to make that first work. You decided to make the depot at the front. You decided to move this overlord here. You decided to make drones instead of lings at this certain point. There are hundreds of thousands of decisions in a normal macro game. And controlling the flow of those decisions is one of the most important parts of succeeding, especially at a much higher level. And that's something, I mean, you kind of have to figure out for yourself, but this comes down to, if you go into a replay, if you go into a game, you kind of think, alright, what decision am I making? What am I trading off for this? What could he exploit about this decision, and what will he be weak to because I made this decision? And those are all important things to note during the game. And decision making, one of the most important parts of StarCraft. Once you have the mechanical speed, decision making is the difference between you and a player who's as fast or faster than you, and there will always be those players. So that's something you really need to focus on, and just keep thinking, I could have made better decisions with even the resources I had, even though I might not have been perfect on my macro, and I could have done better off of that. And now, just to finish it up, StarCraft, there's no video that can tell you how to learn how to play StarCraft just foolproofly. There's so many different ways to learn. There's so many different mindsets. I just want to leave you with, you're not very good at this game. I'm not very good at this game. I'm in the top 1% of players. I'm in the top 10, 15 random players on North America. I still could not take a single game out of 20 off of Pult, for example. No one, if you're top 10 or you're top 3 bronze, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that you're feeling, a lot of people from StarCraft, it's a hard game to derive enjoyment from because it's so difficult. It's so punishing to players who aren't as confident in their play, who aren't winning as much. But honestly, I get the most enjoyment out of successfully executing a build, or outplaying my opponent, or outthinking them. What's important is you're learning. What's important is you're taking something away from playing the game. You're going to do better the next game, rather than you're playing the game to win. Because if you're playing to win, eventually you're going to lose so much that you'll get too discouraged in order to improve. And that's why I see a lot of players drop out of playing StarCraft. A lot of players just stagnate at a certain skill level instead of getting to that point they want to be, and eventually get so frustrated that they just kind of stop playing or start developing really bad habits, like cheesing every game just to get a win in a certain matchup or something like that. And I think that if players just had that mindset of, I'm playing to improve instead of playing to win, and just getting better and better, playing faster, making better decisions, outplaying their opponent, pulling off great moves that allow you to win games. That's where the enjoyment comes from. That's why StarCraft is the best game in the world, and that's why you should continue playing. I hope this helped. I know it was kind of a very general description of how to learn, but I hope you can take some of the points away from this. I hope you keep playing StarCraft. I hope you check out my stream as well, which is going to be in the link below, but I hope you enjoyed watching. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to keep playing. Good luck, have fun. Go play 15 games now. I've been WinterStarcraft. This has been episode 3 of my Bronze to Master series, and I hope you tune in next time. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.